So, Ashley, why don't we go right to you and talk about your all's work this past session and those pretextual stops and a little bit maybe more about how marijuana fit into that?
So most of our victories, I would say this term, were killing things. Basically, the legislature, the Republican legislature and legislators came after every single reform that's been passed in the last 2 years. Almost every single one, there was a bill to repeal it. The major victories, I'd say, would be killing the pretextual reform and probation reform, which we got passed. Pretextual reform was passed and is a huge victory. And it's actually something Virginia was the first on, and now other jurisdictions, other states are actually looking to do. And what we did is, as a bunch of public defenders, we looked at all of the reasons that police were using to pull people over. The United States Supreme Court had previously said, even if the police officer has nefarious reasons, i.e. racist reasons for pulling someone over, that's perfectly fine as long as they can point to some infraction as a reason. Not signaling, not stopping to a full stop at a stop sign, things of that nature. As long as there was something, so the police can just follow you until you make some minuscule of the literally thousands of infractions that Virginia has, they're allowed to pull you over. Statistically speaking, people of color are twice as likely to be pulled over and 3 times as likely to be searched during that stop with the police. So this is being used and has been used in a completely disparate way. So in the last session, we were able to get a bill passed that banned stopping people for basically about 10 of the most egregious uses. These are things like dangling object, which a normal person would think that it's something that's completely obstructing your windshield to your view. It's supposed to be a safety thing. It's not. The courts have held even an air freshener, college tassels, anything hanging from your rearview mirror followed under that. You can guess that a white college student having their tassels is not pulled over, where a person of color with rosary beads is pulled over. And that was perfectly legal. When you look at things like broken taillight, even though the other taillight's completely working, third brake light, which most people don't even know that their car has, and excessive tint, registration, things of this nature, that some of them are based on poverty. People don't have the money to fix those things in their cars, or it's just the excuses that police use to pull over largely people of color. And so a couple sessions ago, the legislature passed a bill that is the law that you cannot pull someone over for a list of those pretextual reasons. And if someone is pulled over, then they can't use anything from the search. So it's unlawful to do it. And then there has to actually be a penalty, or it would still continue. Nothing can be used in court based on what is found. In with that was also the banning of search for the odor of marijuana. The odor of marijuana was by far the biggest reason for searching a car. I can't tell you how many cases I've had where it was the odor of marijuana when there was none found in the car, because it's just an excuse, and it's impossible to prove or disprove if the officer smelled it. If the person probably didn't even, but let's just say they had smoked earlier in the day, they get in the car and it was a free pass for the police to just ransack their car. And, we only see the cases where the police find something. There are plenty of other cases where they just ransack someone's car on the side of the road and leave them there to pick up the damage because they found nothing. And so with that bill, it was also banned for searches just for odor of marijuana, which has significantly decreased the amount of car searches, particularly disparate impact, racially based searches of cars.
And Ashley, you're mentioning searches of cars and rampaging cars. Now, with these search, are they also able to search the people as well, like on their person?
Yes.
And the stories and the conversations we also often hear with these searches are the very aggressive types of physical searches that are going on, the very inappropriate, even molestation, abuse that are going on within these searches. So I just wanted to also bring up to the point of that stopping this search isn't just from stopping the search in the car. It's also could be very much stopping an assault on people's bodies and stopping the lack of boundaries that the cops really have once they feel like they have a legal reason to put that type of authority on folks.
If people don't immediately submit to the police's aggressive authority, the police will pull them out of the car, throw them on the ground, handcuff them just so they can search their car. I mean, watching body cam as much as I do, it's even more egregious than people think how much people's personal bodily autonomy is violated on a regular basis. And because if I have the case, that means there was some sort of alleged criminal activity that never comes to light, is how the person was treated. I have had cases where I remember one, it was in the middle of winter and it was a grandfather and his grandson. And this officer was just dead set certain there was something in the car. She pulled out the gentleman and his grandson, middle of January, made them wait outside the car for 40 minutes while she ransacked the car. The only thing she found was an old empty alcohol container. And then they prosecuted it. They full went to court to prosecute this, which is why I had the case.
Right.
We beat the case, but I mean, to see that poor child and to see the grandfather on the side of the street, these are the kind of things that the citizenry don't realize how much of an abuse of power and how much power the police have. So pretextual reform, prohibiting the search for marijuana significantly limits the police's ability to even have those initial interactions.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And that is why repeal is just our main push right now as we are legalizing, quote unquote, is because of this really atrocious drug war that has been put in place, that has been put in power to have those types of experiences for so many people. And unfortunately, as Ashley is saying, that folks like us that are not experiencing this really are not internalizing nor understanding how often this is happening. And many people are also not understanding how much money the cops are getting for this to continue to happen. Does anybody else want to say anything about that piece?
I would just say that I think a lot of Black people, brown people, undocumented folks, Indigenous people, we know, right? We know it because it's our communities and our experiences. So to be able to have folks in the legislature that are speaking truth to this, that are bringing impacted folks into that process, I think is so important, especially when we're reducing the incidences where people are coming into contact with police that we know are violent, like extensions of the state.
Exactly. And that's what really the repeal is for, is to shrink the power of this carceral institution. And that's what we're here for in this legalization process, is to shrink the power of the system and increase the power of the people.